I'm Liz Gridley. This is Kat of Kat Art Illustrations. She'll be doing our demo today on Copic and Alcohol inks, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
We would like to acknowledge the Kulin Nation, particularly the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people, of elders past and present and emerging, for being the original creators on this land, the original artists. So thank you so much for everyone for coming tonight. We are doing, yes, these demos here in store are a free thing that the bosses came up with as a way to talk about products that people don't always know all the details about that product, how to use it, different ways to do fun things, and of which Kat likes to break the normal way of doing things in very good ways. And yes, they're free for all the customers, and then we record them for our YouTube channel, The Art Shop Australia. Don't go searching for our old account that no one can find the password for. And yeah, we're very excited to have Kat with us today because she is a Copic witch in the best possible way and very, very inventive with the way she uses her materials. After the quick talk, we're going to have a bit of a try session with the other table at the back, so that way everyone can bring the chairs over, we'll all sit down and have a try. Fantastic. Thank you all so much. All right, I'm going to leave Kat to it. Enjoy.
Hello, my name's Kat. I do stuff like this. And hang on, one of these has things in it that I just realised I need to collect at some point. Uh-oh. Yes, they're hiding in this one. I also do little experiments, trying to find ways to use Copic markers in a way that they're not supposed to be used. So we'll go through a little bit of that. But I will start out with just telling you a little bit about product, and I wrote it down because I'm very bad at remembering things. So, what are Copic markers? They're an alcohol marker. So basically they're a dye suspended in alcohol. Alcohol ink naturally blends, so you don't really need anything to help you blend it. It naturally blends with each colour on its own. And it sort of helps you allow to create like seamless gradients and things like that. They are the original alcohol marker, and they were created in Japan in 1987, so they're a year older than me. And they were originally used for like product creation or like automobile design, all that sort of stuff. And then they were adopted by the Japanese comic book and manga industry, and then they kind of spread out to all the other places, and now they're used in things like illustration, fashion design, architecture, tattoos, storyboarding, and paper craft, and like stamping, and also ink pouring. They're available in 368 colours, and they have various styles of pen. So they have the classic, which was their original design. That's these guys. They come with a bullet tip, you can see that. And they also come with a wedge tip. These were the ones that were originally used for designing and making sure that things were very precise. The next one I'm going to show you is the sketch, which is the ones that most of the illustration world uses, including myself. These guys have a brush. Oh wait, the classic comes in 214 colours, so not the entire range. These guys do come the entire range. They have what is my favourite tip, which is the brush tip. And they also have the wedge tip. And the last one is the chow, which is this little guy. This is more like the budget marker. It holds a little bit less ink and it's a bit cheaper than the other ones. It still has the brush tip and the wedge tip. It only comes in 180 colours though. You can use all of them together. They're all the same ink. The classic holds the most ink. This one's in the middle, and that one's the smallest, but you can refill them, so it doesn't actually matter too much. Oh yes, and the nibs are replaceable, so you can replace them if you destroy them. It's actually really difficult to destroy them. I have two littlies and they try really hard, and they haven't yet, but I have managed to destroy two in my time, and that was trying to use them on rocks and some like really sort of gritty textures. They work, but then they fray, so then you replace the nib. But you can also get nibs that are different to the ones that they come with. You can get what they call something like a mini super brush. So it's this brush, but it's like a smaller version of it. It's not quite the same as the bullet tip. And yes, you can get a few other different versions of various things. So if you decide that you like something else, you can replace all of your nibs in one particular style. And what have I missed? Nothing. All right, so one question I get asked a lot is, are they light fast? They are not. They are dye suspended in alcohol. Copic specifically has ethanol as their alcohol. It's considered non-toxic, though it can be a bit whiffy, especially if you're using just the ink on its own. So I would suggest having at least some ventilation in your studio when you're using them. They also suggest that children under the age of 12 don't use them. My 6-year-old doesn't believe in that, so we try really hard to have a lot of ventilation. And obviously try not to lean right over your artwork when you're using them. Because they are dye-based instead of pigment, they aren't light fast. They will fade if they're left in direct sunlight. However, you can do things like use like a UV resistant glass if you're framing them, or you can use a UV resistant varnish. You can use both, which is preferable. Also, when you're framing or putting them up, obviously don't put them up in direct sunlight on a wall that's, next to a window or anything like that. A lot of people reckon that it will fade anyway, even if you keep it out of the sun, but I have some proof here. This is my sketchbook from when I was in high school. So this is about 17 years old. Let's see if we can find some marker work. And they're still exactly the same as they were when I did. That one's pretty bright. You can see he's still the same colours that he was when I did him. So, and those are actually not all Copics. Some of those are really cheap, nasty alcohol markers, and the ink is still fine. So as long as you are, reasonably taking care of your work, it will last a while. I would also suggest, though, even though, you're doing all these things to take care of it, scan it before you do anything else with it. Make sure you've got like a finished copy of it, and then, you've always got it, just in case. They're also acid-free once the alcohol is evaporated, and they don't use any animal products. So I think that's all of the stuff. That's all of the boring information. Yes, let's talk about some paper. So using alcohol markers, your experience will greatly differ depending on what type of paper you're using. So I specifically like using Express-It blending card, which is this one here. Luckily, Express-It have been nice enough to provide us some today, so you guys will get to take some home and play with it. This one is like a hot press, very smooth paper. You can use them on any other paper if you want. It just, your experience is going to be different, and you may get frustrated depending on what you're trying to do with it. So if you use like a really absorbent paper, then it's going to suck in all of your ink, and you'll have a little bit of a harder time blending because you're sort of fighting it, pulling in all this ink. You'll also find that if you layer it, each layer will get darker. So if you're trying to colour a large area, then you're going to find that patches are going to be darker than others. If you use something in the totally opposite direction, like UFO paper or something like that, that's like a coated plastic paper, you'll find that the ink sits on top of the paper and it kind of beads. And every time you colour, you'll be picking up that first colour that you put down. Doesn't mean you can't use it, it just means you have to use it in a different way. And a lot of people do use both of those papers with great success. This one is sort of in the middle, so it will hold your ink a little bit, enough that you can blend with it, but it won't be sucking all of that ink in. It also allows you to colour in one colour, so you can layer it and it won't go any darker. That allows you to create like a nice flat, even surface. But just, be aware that there's no like wrong paper to use. Basically, just if you're using a paper, just test it when you're using it. So, check what happens when you layer it, check what happens when you try to blend it, all those sort of things. And anything that we go through today, you can just check what it does on that and then make a decision. All right, so let's do the fun stuff. I'll take you through a crash course in colouring, and then afterwards we'll get to do our own thing. So let's get a piece of paper out. All right, so I also suggest testing your colours when you're using them. The cap colour is not correct to the actual ink colour, so always test them. I usually have like a little sheet next to me that tells me I have to do it every time. But today I'm going to start doing little swatches as well because I didn't bring that one with me. So I use the brush tip. I'm going to use a middle color because it'll be easy for you guys to see. So this guy, I always hold it really far back on the barrel because you don't want to be like right in here doing these little like movements. You want it to be quite flowy, and also hold it quite on an angle. So I'll show you guys upwards as well, but basically you want to do this kind of like almost a flicking motion. You're kind of like pushing down and then flicking up at the end, and it allows you to have this sort of fluffy end to it, right? So when you're having a go, I would suggest practicing little flicky motions like this. Another way to colour is also circular motions like this. A lot of people swear by that. When I'm doing a flat colour, I really like to just do one way and then the other way. And the good thing about Copics is you can just keep going until you're happy with what your colour looks like. If you wait for this to dry, for example, that one is drying, you will find that it is harder to blend once it's completely dry. You can definitely do it, you just got to work a little bit harder for it. So you can see that this sort of edge is now completely dry. And I colour over the top of it. You can kind of see, where it is still. But you can definitely just keep going again with your layers or for a circular motion like so, and you'll be able to cover it up. You just have to work a bit harder for it. If it's still wet, you'll find it a lot easier to blend colours together as well, not just the one. So blending colours, you'll actually find with these that the colours will try to overpower each other. That's a way of putting it. So actually I'll use what I've already got there. So we've got this patch here. It's actually still a little bit wet. So let me go in with like a total opposite colour. I'm going to go in with a yellow. And you'll see that it's starting to push away the purple. So the more you add to it, the more you'll sort of push that colour away. Obviously, the darker it is, the harder it will be to push, and you won't always be able to get rid of a colour entirely. I can show you guys this close up when we're having a play as well. But you can use this to your advantage. So if you want to, let's say, blend a couple of colours together, I'm using that flicking motion again that I was talking about before. You can hear it's angry with me because I haven't refilled the ink. Making screaming noises. I'll go in with a pink, which is pretty close to opposite, and now I'm just going to go straight back in the opposite direction doing the same motion. This is only one layer. You can see they're already starting to blend. And basically all you need to do is just keep going back and forth until it looks how you want it to look. So a lot of people really like having a little bit of texture. Some people really like just having absolute smooth. It's totally up to you, and depends on what you're doing as well. A lot of like stamp crafters and people who want to just colour in like a colouring book or something like that, just want it to be like a nice flat colour. So you can do your circular motion. We don't want that end. I mean, that end's okay, but I don't like it. So you can do your circular motion like this. And I'm going to attempt to do this upright. We'll see how this goes. And you can blend into that colour. Yes? Question?
So is there no right or wrong way to...
I personally believe no. I think they're really good experimentation tools. And I do a lot of things with them that are wrong, but they work fine for me. So I really highly suggest just playing with them and not having an expectation of what you want it to look like initially, because that's when you get really frustrated and give up, because they can be pretty unforgiving if you're like, I want this, but you don't know what paper the person used, you don't know how they used it, you don't know how many hours they spent or how many layers they did. So if you're kind of expecting, I want this thing, but that person spent 100 hours on that artwork and you spent 2 and you don't know why it doesn't look the same. Like, you can get really frustrated really fast, especially if the paper's not the same. So honestly, I would just keep playing with all different ideas, watch people online do it, and just sort of try and replicate how they do it and see what works for you, because the way you use it's going to be different to a way another person uses it.
Is there any right or wrong paper that you should use?
So we covered paper just before. So we've got Expressive blending card here today, which is what I'm using.
Yeah.
It comes in pads. Where did I chuck it? So this guy down here is just a pad. It comes in books as well, and various other things. I have like A1 pads, papers at home as well of this. So they're pretty good with providing what you could use. And we have some of that here today for you guys to use as well and take home. But you can definitely use any other papers as well. You can use watercolor papers. You'll find your experience totally different with blending, and you can use UFO papers and find it totally different.
If it's
as
a
well.
very absorbent paper that you've got, is there any kind of treatment or anything you would do
To change it,
yeah.
I have tried to put watercolor ground down before to see what happens. And
It's a guy that I watch use Copic markers on YouTube, but he does them in the cheap colouring books.
Yep.
Which, you know, the cheap paper usually absorbs it
Yes.
a lot, but they don't on his one, so I'm wondering maybe there's
It could be the way that he's using it as well. Like if he's holding it down for only a short time, it's less likely to bleed out than it is if you hold it for a long time. Yeah, I would say that it's more the technique than it is
He also uses a combination of pencils.
the paper. Yes, so a lot of people will do Copics first and then pencils on top, which is totally fine. It helps you get a lot of detail.
Okay.
I like the challenge of not using it because I'm stubborn. So that's just me. Has nothing to do with how anyone else. A lot of people use pencils and it looks amazing. I would highly suggest not using markers on top of pencil though, because that will clog your nib and you'll have to replace it. Very difficult to destroy a nib, but that is one of the ways. So let me talk about that for a little bit actually. So a lot of people will talk about how they go through the page. I've got a little piece of cardboard down here to save the table today. You can get things like plastic, like sheets that are specifically for being behind markers. I prefer to have something a little bit porous because I find if you have plastic, the ink will then sit underneath the page and then it won't, like it'll sort of ruin how the blending process works. But this is normal. So any paper that does that is not a bad paper for markers. That's just how they are. What they talk about is basically when you have a line that you want to colour inside, but you hold down the marker and it bleeds out across the page from where you haven't like touched it. If you hold this, oh, that's a little bit actually. There you go. So see how the longer I hold it, might be hard to see down the back. The longer I hold it, the more it's escaping that initial tap that I did. You can see the difference between the two dots. So the longer you hold it on the paper, the more unruly the ink becomes. So if you're using an absorbent paper, I would suggest being really quick with your mark strokes as well. Yeah. Let's talk about the blender, because it's not actually a blender.
Hey Kat, what's the blender do?
It doesn't blend! I posted a video online and got yelled at for saying the blender wasn't a blender, but it's not. You can technically blend with it if you are blending from one colour into your background colour, so white or whatever colour you're colouring on. But what it is it's just an ethanol marker. So it's just alcohol. So what it will actually do is bleach out your colour. So if this is like a lot of people will start out thinking that you need the blender because it's called a blender. And they'll try to put it between two different colours and bleach the colour out in the middle and then go, oh, this doesn't work, I'm done. So I don't know why they call it a blender, and a lot of other companies have since called it a blender just because that's what Copic did, and it's very frustrating. So it's a bleacher, right? One of the companies calls it Zero, which I prefer. But yeah, basically what you want to do with this guy is actually make textures. And you can also, let's say, so here we go. We've got that little outside of the line that we made just before. You can actually push it back or bleach it away. So if you've got a mistake.
So it's kind of like an eraser in a way.
You can use it as an eraser. You can use it as several things. I actually really love the blender, but it's just not a blender. It's very difficult to see from here, but it's starting to push the colour back again.
Oh, so you're putting it beside it, and as it runs, takes the colour with it back to it.
Yeah. So what I was sort of worrying at it basically. So I would almost actually make the movement of pushing it back towards where it
In other
goes.
words, as you flood the paper,
It will push it away.
with you.
That's right. So
Using a wet paintbrush with oil paint.
yeah, or if watercolor, picking up some color. Yeah. One thing I really like about markers is I can liken them to a lot of other art supplies and then try and use them in that way. And you can kind of do it, but it's like a totally different medium. So I apply a lot of painter knowledge to how I use them. So let's do some textures. So I often like to make, this is my favorite way to display it, little wedge tip. You just put it down, hold it down for a minute, and then go next to it, and then go next to it, and then under, and under. You've got a brick wall. I don't know if you can see up the back there how it's starting to bleach it out. The longer you leave it on, the longer it will bleach out. If you have a really dark colour, you're never going to get back to white, but you can definitely pick up a lot of colour if you need to. It's not going to ruin your blender marker either. Yeah, I could see your face. So this is one of my really old ones. So you can, I don't know if you can see there, but it does have a stain on the top of it. That doesn't do anything. It looks ugly, I guess, but like it doesn't come through at all. I'll do a couple of worse things to this in a minute, and I'll show you how to clean it. But yeah, the nibs are really good, and that goes for every colour. If you're colouring one colour on top of another colour, a lot of people are scared that it's going to ruin that nib. It doesn't. It doesn't do anything to it. That's what they're for. So, and if you somehow manage to, and I don't know how you would, you can replace it. You have to replace the whole marker, so that's always a bonus. So this one's an ethanol marker, but something I also use, which does pretty much the same thing as rubbing alcohol. So you can get these guys at Bunnings, Coles, wherever. These are both spray bottles. These smell a lot worse than these two, so just be aware if you're spraying this in your studio, then it's window. And I'm going to use this very sparingly because I will gas all of us in here. So one fun thing to do with this is, I don't know if you guys can see back there. Might be difficult to see, but it's starting to create this cool mottled texture. I really like it because it kind of reminds me of watercolours. So I tend to put a lot of that into my work. The more you add, the more mottled it's going to come. Some other things that you can, that's why I have a spray bottle as well. And different spray bottles will make different textures.
Does the Darren isopropyl smell better than that stuff?
I haven't used it. It might. It probably would actually. Yeah.
We sell isopropyl through Darren, and then we got the Q2
Yeah.
radiation spray bottle. But
This one. Here's one I prepared earlier. These guys are really, I actually really love this as a spray bottle, so I would highly suggest having a look at those. This sort of spray tip will give you an uneven spray, so you'll find some bits like sort of spit out and it's like a larger blob, yeah, gloop, I don't know. Whereas this one's actually quite even, so yeah, it's nice misty mist. I tend to use this one with the coloured ink instead of the blender, but that's just because of how I like things to look. So you can do, again, whatever suits you and what you like. So I've stolen one of these from the shop. I'm going to open this one up. This is a refill ink for the Copic. They did used to come in a larger one as well that looked kind of like a rectangle. They don't sell those ones anymore. These ones are the new ones. So when you're... So they said it was because within Japan, so they tend to provide for the Japanese audience and then we just get whatever. So they said that the Japanese audience preferred a smaller real estate, I guess, so you can put it all in the same display. I reckon because they sell them for almost the same price that they're
making more money.
Yeah, they're making more money out of it.
Lesser amount.
And a lot of people in Japan don't use them for like the ink dropping, so they don't need a large amount of it. So if they're just refilling their marker, then they don't need like that much. Like it'd take them a lot
It would
longer
definitely, for Japan, it would definitely be we like this and it's more suited to what we need
Yes.
it for. And they're also going, well, we're winning because it's a
Yeah.
so it's definitely would be both. For
But
Japan.
it's still the same ink at least, and they have changed the tip. That was the other thing that they, I'll open it up so you can have a look. They've changed the tip a little bit because they said it's easier to refill. I don't think it matters. I haven't noticed a difference between the two. That's the refill tip there. Basically how, I don't think I actually brought this color. I could have thought that through. Oh, I did! Ah! All right. I totally thought that through. So a couple of different ways to refill. You can just drop it onto the broad nib. Make sure you've got something underneath you because once it gets full, it may drip out the bottom. You actually don't want it to get to that point because then you sort of have to sit here and wait for it to finish dripping. Otherwise, when you draw with it, it's going to drip on your drawing. My suggestion would be to actually watch. This is already full, so I won't do too much in it. Watch the bottom, and it will be very dry when it needs refilling. You'll see it get moist as it refills, and once it looks like a new marker, stop touching it.
So what are we talking? 10 drops, half a bottle?
It depends on how much you've used it.
If it's empty.
If it's empty, I tend to do, so I don't know how many drops because I just sit there spraying it. But I'd say to take me maybe a couple of minutes to completely refill one. I also have bad wrists, so my squeezing ability is probably not as good as some other people's. But you'll notice it pretty quickly. Once you've refilled one marker, it'll, yeah, and I can now tell based on how much it weighs. So,
Sorry.
you know you've used things too long when, right? So that's one way of refilling it. The other way is you can actually get tweezers for this that they make, but I just use my fingers. Pull out one nib, you can do either or, and then directly insert this into the top. This is a much easier way of overfilling your marker, so that's why I don't tend to do it. But it depends on how impatient you are. And this is why they've also said that they've changed the nib to be better, because this is easier to insert. The old one was a bit bigger and a bit shorter. I don't know how I feel about that, but we've discussed what we think that they've done it for. So those are the two ways to refill your marker. Very easy both ways. The other point is try not to have both lids off because the pressure inside the marker will change as you add more in. And if you've got a lid on, you also can't tell if it's overfilled. You might end up taking your lid off and an explosion of ink.
How do you get it off your hands?
So you can use rubbing alcohol. You can wear gloves. Where did my lid go? It's gone forever. Yes, I just live with it and it disappears at some point. But you can just wash your hands. It usually comes off pretty easily. Hand sanitizer would definitely work. Anything that's alcohol based.
Now, did you ever try barrier cream before you work?
Never bothered to try it because I'm too worried it's going to get on the paper.
Oh, that's what I use for oil cream.
Yeah.
It's like a moisturiser you get from the pharmacy.
Yeah.
Barrier cream, and it stops things staining.
Yes. I haven't tried it, but I'd be concerned that it would stain the paper. Yeah.
Or worry about the paper in the hand.
Yeah. I don't care about my hair.
Story of my life. The art comes first, the thought of myself second, right? Ink in a spray bottle, that's what we were doing, the fun thing. All right, so you can get any kind of empty spray bottle. I like this guy. And you can, depends on how precious you are with your ink, but you can just spray him in there. I'll show the camera here too. And obviously I would put a lot more in there if I was doing something specific with this, but just in the name of showing you guys what you can do with it. This is a really fun way to do backgrounds. Get him going. Did I put enough in?
Turn it a bit more. Other way. No,
Just-
turn the bottom.
Oh, this,
You're not on the there. Now.
Yeah.
this is the worst angle. Because I want now. Alright, hang on. You behave. It's getting there. There we go. Alright. So you can do some really cool textures and backgrounds and things. If you do more than one ink, then they'll do that really cool sort of like bleaching each other out, but making a cool texture. As it fades, you'll notice certain areas are lighter than others because it's been aerated as it comes out of the bottle.
Would each ink need a separate bottle, or could you?
I don't bother. I just will clear it out with water and then reuse it. If you're doing something where you sort of feel like you need more than one at the same time, then you can have a few. I usually have 3 going at once, a light one, a medium one, and a dark one. I also sometimes don't bother to clean it out and just put another ink in. Yeah, pre-blending. You can actually, they do sell empties. They sell empty inks and empty ink bottles and empty markers. You can make your own colours, so I do a lot of that too. I don't particularly like their purple range, so I've made quite a few purples of my own.
Do you mix it with alcohol as well?
No, so I would just mix, I wouldn't mix these 2 colours, but you know, counting how many drops of each you put in, so then you know next time you want to refill it or you want to remake your ink, what your recipe is.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can make your own. I have a few at home and I've got my little recipes written on the side. I've stuck them all down. Yeah, so it's lots of different things they provide that are really fun and experimenty. And I feel like they aren't used to their full potential. So we can pick up colour. And we were talking about how it's going to destroy the nibs for you. So here we go. Little piece of plastic, just like a plastic lid. We're going to put one colour down. You can use whatever nib you want. You see it's sitting on top of the plastic. You pick it up with another colour. Let's go yellow, make it obvious. Oh, let's use the other end. You can see I'm starting to pick it up with the nib.
Are you just transferring it to the other nib?
I'm collecting it, yeah. And then I'll show you this as well, but you can colour and go from one colour to another colour.
Can you do that if you're detaching?
I was about to show you that as well, yep. So the other thing you can do is touch nibs. Many a joke has been made when I've said, do you want to touch the tips?
Aren't you contaminating?
No, so it just sits within the nib and you can clean it up. This is exactly what happens with your blender. So it might be hard to see on the purple one, but I've transferred the colours on both of them. So there's now yellow on this one.
The light will go to the dark,
Yep.
the dark will go to the light.
Yes. Yeah, they're very fun.
I can see the purple on the yellow one.
Yeah,
but I
it's a
can't
bit
see
harder to see the yellow on the
Yeah.
purple one, but it is there. And then you do the same thing. You can just colour from one colour to another. You do have to be a bit particular about which side you're colouring on, obviously, because you put it on one side. But the more you let it touch, the longer you'll have of the one colour to the other colour. I do find, where's my yellow? I do find the darker colour it's so hard to notice it when you're doing it. So I would do the darker colour to the lighter colour and then use the light marker. I'm running out of time. They also make an airbrush system, which I didn't bring today because it would involve a whole lot of more things to show you. But basically, it's a little thing. You can wedge anything that has a wedge tip in it, shove it in. It blows air across the top, and you can spray it. I prefer using this because I feel like it's more fun. I do things like wet on wet, trying to be a watercolor artist. I'll spray down a whole lot of the blender or this guy, and then use makeup brushes to try and buff the color through it. I also use a sponge underneath to try and keep it wet because the alcohol obviously tries to dry really quickly. So that's what I did with those backgrounds there. They're super fun. You can kind of see on the back how it's worked. What else?
Final thought,
You can use it in resin.
latest experiment.
Yeah, this is the most recent one. I've still got some things I want to change about this guy, but you can use the ink within the resin. So I've dripped it into the resin. This is also a drawing that I did on paper and put it straight in. Neither resin nor alcohol markers are light fast, so this guy is going nowhere near any windows. I also have heard that over time, the alcohol ink within the resin really does fade quite badly. I haven't obviously seen that yet, but I've used it over the similar colour just to boost that colour. I wouldn't use it on its own. I think that's all I've got. I was going to do a little demo for you, but maybe I will do that
I think we're going to
When
have a bit
you
of
guys-
a play on the table.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Kat, of course. Oh my gosh, your brain is so full of things.
Ah.
It's so good. But we also want to say a huge thank you to Express It because they've provided a little pack of blending card for everyone to use now and then take home. So I'll give these out in a second. We also want to say a huge thank you to Pilot because they're providing a juice up pen for you all. So this is a white gel pen. Kat uses them all the time in her work. You can see her using them.
You can see them on here. These little like strokey strokes.
And she also does like smudging with her finger. There's a lot of amazing videos on Kat's YouTube, Instagram, all the socials on her using these, and she'll show us all on the table again a little excerpt of that.
I've got one of these here to take home too.
We've got a little
so
instructional step by
you
step.
can follow the step by step.
But these are Kat's original artwork, so if you want to come up and have a good look at them, they are absolutely amazing in person. And huge thank you to Kat!
Thank you.
Hooray! Thank you! Alright, so everyone's got one of everything? Great! Alright.
Sprayed that with the see the texture starting to come in.
Alright, everyone, we've got about 10 minutes.
If you want to give it a go on your patch.
Well, we've got to be out by 6.
See the texture starting to come in.
Well, we've got to be out by 6:30. Out by 6:30 is the limit. So.
Oh, I see it all coming through.
And the longer, like you let it, leave it for a little bit, and it will sort of continue lifting for it, like while it's drying.